First of all, I love this show. I know you have heard that 100,000 times.
Oh, that's great.
What I'm curious about is that Interview with the Vampire deals very much with recollection and memory and unreliable narrators and all of these things. I am suddenly very nervous now that I'm actually in your presence. But
Oh, well,
how
thank you. I'm nervous that we're together chatting. I'm nervous
um
in your presence. Let's be nervous together. I don't know.
yeah, like, right. Yeah, but as an actor, how do you sort of deal with portraying that and portraying maybe like somebody else's recollection of this character? Does that play into your thinking at
Yeah,
all?
and we talk about it all the time. And it's and I think it's something like that we all do, playing the roles. We sort of look at how the character is at a specific period of time. I mean, with Lestat specifically, yes, he's often seen through the eyes of Louis, but I can't say that Louis got it all wrong. But there are definitely moments where we're going to push into the like hyper arch villain. I think but also like playing with Armand's perspective and Armand letting him, Armand sort of seeing him a bit more as a kind of like a romance novel cover kind of thing, and what that dynamic is. But like Assad does a very similar thing where he's sort of playing multiple characters at multiple different times, and Jacob does the same thing where you see them, through different lenses at different periods of time. I think that's sort of the joy of what this show is, and what it gives us as actors is the opportunity to kind of really have very mercurial, flexible roles that we can try different things, explore different things. As well, it's quite a fun thing to keep returning back to, because you don't really ever feel set in stone. You feel like you can give a new era a go, which I suppose is the joy of playing an immortal character, I guess.
I mean, I mentioned your charm. That's such a big part of the character. Do you feel like that's maybe like hard for you sometimes to have to be this sort of looming presence that sort of exudes all these different, like the gambit of human emotion?
um, I don't know if hard. I mean, like, you mean like, do you feel like a lot of pressure to be able to be, like, what do you mean by hard? Or is it just hard to?
Pressure, or I mean also just difficult to sort of, as you meant, like there's so many facets in season two. I mean, he's playing a bit like playing a person who is a vampire who's playing.
Oh,
Oh,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, of course, and it's always challenging. I mean, that's why it's so fun. I mean, it is a really challenging show. Um, and it's sort of under the premise of it being a genre vampire show, but I guess really we use the metaphor of a vampire to be a much larger conduit to have kind of really intense conversations about humanity. So you are playing a bunch of different levels at all time, which makes it challenging. And Roland Jones also is like extraordinary at layering the script and layering every scene with as many different things as possible. He has a kind of obsession about making sure that an audience is never going to be bored, and he really wants you to lock in when you watch. And when you have to kind of translate that on set, sometimes you're obviously speaking multiple languages. You're usually doing some kind of a stunt with a rig of some kind, or multiple dialogues between multiple characters, one happening telepathically and one happening in present day. There's so many things that he layers onto it. But yeah, I guess in terms of like keeping the overall arc of Lestat alive, it's sort of important that we remain connected to the love story at the center of it, which is Louis and Lestat, and so that you feel attached to their separation and their experience previously and going forward, that you as an audience member continue to invest in these characters and their push and pull. So that's kind of complex, because we have to play those beats sometimes in random and turnabout ways, like a ghost or a vision, or so it's always challenging, but challenges are fun.
Well, I feel like maybe if your next role is going to be quote unquote straightforward, then you're going to be like, I miss all the back. I think about that all the time with actors, is like, how do you go on to just play like some regular guy. You're gonna be, it's gonna
Sometimes regular people are really, really fun to play. Yeah, playing
yeah.
supernatural, very intense vampires can be kind of exhausting too.
Well, and that brings me to my next question, which is like the physicality is so interesting. Like, not just because he's, again, this very like graceful sort of, he's obviously, been alive for centuries, but like you also have the blood and all these scenes. Like, what is it like for you to sort of inhabit the skin of this being?
Um, I don't really like, I think the costumes do so much work for us. But like I think what is fun and probably not really thought about too much is that we all have accents on the show. So we've all sort of developed this sort of like these sort of character skins. So when we start playing the game of the show with each other, the accents come on and the physicality appears and everyone just sort of slips into it and we just kind of play really. It sounds a bit silly, but it's just a big game. So the physicality is sort of always there, because they're like the costumes that we put on. I think you do a lot of thought about it in the beginning. And then now as we go on, it's sort of ingrained, and sometimes you have to work very hard to pull back some of the choices that you've made because you don't want to get stuck in a rut. Like I say, these are mercurial characters, and they are ever evolving, and you want to make sure that you don't get them stuck in a particular era, which is sort of like, one of the joys of the character of Armand is that he's always looking for a way into the new century. You know what I mean?
So I'm sure you're already aware of this, but in doing my like research to talk to you, I realized that fans are very upset at how long they've had to wait in between seasons. And then I wondered, like, what's that like for you as an actor? Like, do you like having maybe, because you've talked about how like when you're shooting the show, you have to shoot very quickly, but as you're sort of waiting, do you feel like having that time helps you prepare? Do you find it maybe difficult to kind of come in and out? And then also like having a lot of time pass, then you have to come back and talk to me about it. Like, do you feel like...
I mean, it's difficult talking about season 2,
Yeah.
honestly, because we're moving into a new season, and so sometimes I have to remember what's happened. But it might feel like a very long time for audiences, but actually we're working the whole time in between, like actually making it, because the difference is when a show comes out, the show is being shot in that period of time, or written or developed or rehearsed, and then they've got to go into post, and we spend a lot of time in post. We spend a lot of time, doing ADR or doing sound recording or whatever it is that we have to bring into it. So it actually doesn't necessarily feel like we get a break. Feels actually like the show just keeps going continuously, and it becomes a lifestyle in a way. Because then we're also promoting it, which also does take up quite a lot of time as well. So
But do you feel like, I mean, I guess when you look back on season 2, like what stands out to you and sort of like what's your overarching takeaway? Like if I was writing a book about your experience on Interview with the Vampire, like what's
the thing that I would take away from season 2? I think, one of the key elements which hopefully, does translate is that, Louis and Lestat really betrayed Claudia. And Claudia is the, most important person in their lives. And, in my opinion, the show really, because she's such an incredible figure. And it's, to lose her like we lose her in this season, should feel so devastating that it creates a world-shattering reverberation throughout the show and throughout, subsequent seasons. So hopefully, the way that Armand, Louis, and Lestat have all interacted with Claudia, and the way that this character has been betrayed by all 3 of them at different stages. And then obviously, Delaney Hales' extraordinary portrayal of this character who is so fundamentally tragic, because, there's this adult trapped in a child's body, which is, you know, an amazing Ricean creation. That you should feel and walk away from this season feeling totally connected to Claudia and be yearning for her like the rest of these vampires are for many years to come.
Well, I have to be honest with you. At the end of season 1, I kind of hated Lestat. Like I was
That's it should be, you should.
charmed by him, but he was just so monstrous at times that I really struggled with like what am I supposed to feel for this character? But I felt in season 2 that things were maybe a little like softer and there were more facets to him that I got to learn, and I felt more of a pull. And so I wondered, like, for you again playing, like, how do you maybe relate to the more monstrous things? Do you find it hard for you at times to empathize with this?
I think, you know, like, because we are telling this sort of onion kind of story where you're peeling away at the artifice, you know, and the point of view and, you know, how Louis is framing Lestat, you're sort of meant to kind of feel like he's you're meant to hate him. You know, but as you peel it away and the things he can't escape and the memories he's trying to erase but he can't, you start to see that there was a bit more of a different dynamic to that relationship. So yeah, I mean, I guess it was sort of sometimes when, you know, early in season 1, I remember, you know, there's a scene where you know, it's after they have the huge kind of attack basically, and Lestat, just before Lestat drops him from the sky, and we had this really complicated rig where I had to pull Jacob down the alley, and that day was really challenging because I just couldn't work out how to pitch it because it felt so wrong. I was like, I just don't really know what I'm doing. Like I couldn't work it out. So it is hard. You kind of have to find the level of not making it so extreme that we just step out of the realm of an audience being able to connect and care about it. But you also have to make it sort of arch enough to feel the stakes of the scene. You know, and the same thing with the trial episode, you know, there's elements of it which, you know, Roland, the way he crafts things is he wants the audience to feel the most that they can feel about any given moment. He always goes, well, let's go to the furthest we can. Let's not give him a little kind of tickle. Let's give him a smack. And sorry, I used that analogy, but anyway, and so the trial was challenging because he really wanted that feeling to come. You wanted to feel like Lestat was coming in there for vengeance, for revenge, you know, and you know there's more than that. It's more complicated than that. There's a lot more going on, but we had to play it for the initial reaction, the initial heat, and then we could slowly slip in more layers around it and afterwards. Yeah.
I love what you said about sort of vampire lore being our conduit to sort of explore all these deeper human emotions, and I felt like that was my experience watching the show. I thought a lot about, you know, resentments or anger, all these emotions, and how I sort of have to sit with them, and here are these people that have been around a lot longer than I have, and they're sitting with all these deep emotions. So I wonder, like, have you sort of wrestled with this idea of, like, maybe how playing this character has influenced you and the way you think about these sort of larger overarching themes in your own life?
I think I'm always informed by any character that you play and any experience you have, whether it be your job or not. You're sort of informed by it in general, I think. So yeah, I'm sure subconsciously somewhere I'm learning from this experience. But more often than not, you have to bring your own experience to these things, and you have to sort of supplement it for the context that you're given in the script. So yeah, I mean, you know, I think everybody, hopefully, well, not hopefully, but, you know, it's an important experience in your life to have your heart broken, and it's important, you know, you learn a lot from that, and it's important experience in life if people are lucky to have it, to actually fall in love, and you know, that's important. So I think to be able to play these things, you have to have live those experiences so that, you know, you can make it feel human, you can make it make sense, and you're not just living in, you know, big genre fantasy world. Yeah.
Sam, I have to let you go, but I do want to give you like the final word if there's anything that I haven't asked you about that you wanted to mention. And then, I mean, if there's anything you can tell me about season 3 to hold on to.
Yeah, what was the first part of your question?
If there's just anything that you
Anything else I want to say?
Yeah.
Like
No, you tell me more.
But let me tell you about season 3 is that yes, we are there. Yeah, we're very close to filming it, and we'll be filming in Toronto. Daniel Hart is working feverishly away, and I'm really excited for everybody to see the work that he has done, because it is extraordinary.
Well, I wish you the best of luck and have fun on season 3, and hopefully we get to catch up again. But thank you so much for your time. This was such a
Very nice to meet you.